It was a cold night in early March. This happened about 2 years ago. I had just arrived home from work. That night I had been working late, so by the time I walked through the door, it was almost midnight. I was completely drained. All I wanted was to open a freezing cold beer, sit down on the couch, and put my feet up for a while. So that's exactly what I did. After a long and exhausting day, alcohol always seems to taste even better. I didn't even bother turning on the TV right away. I simply sat there on the couch with my eyes closed and my feet stretched out, trying to block out the constant thoughts about how stressful my life had been lately. After a moment, I picked up the remote and started flipping through the channels, but nothing looked interesting. Every channel felt boring. After scrolling for a few more minutes, I finally gave up and decided to just sit there quietly and enjoy my beer. But apparently, peace and quiet was too much to ask for. Not even 10 seconds later, every single light in my house suddenly went out at the exact same time. You know that faint, fuzzy popping sound that happens right before the power cuts out? That small crackling noise that lasts just a split second. Yeah, that sound. I absolutely hate hearing it. For some reason, our house had a habit of losing electricity every now and then. Thinking about it now, it still happens sometimes. Anyway, my first instinct was to step outside and check if the neighboring houses had also lost power. I walked outside and carefully closed the door behind me, trying to keep whatever warmth was left inside the house, just in case I couldn't get the power back on quickly. It was late, but I clearly remember seeing at least one house on my street with their lights still on. That immediately confirmed something I didn't want to believe. The problem was only with my house. I closed my eyes for a second and took a slow, deep breath. I already knew this problem was going to ruin whatever small amount of relaxation I was hoping to get that night. So I turned around to go back inside, but when I grabbed the handle of the front door and tried to turn it, it wouldn't move. I suddenly stopped. For a moment, I just stood there, frozen and completely confused. I grabbed the handle again and tried it several more times, but it was clear now the door was locked. For a second, I just stood there, confused. What the hell was going on? I knocked on the door hard and called out my wife's name, thinking maybe she had woken up and locked the door without me noticing. But there was no response at all. The house stayed completely silent. I leaned closer and tried to look through the glass, hoping to see something inside. But the house was still completely dark. I couldn't see anything. My heart started beating faster. I quickly ran around to the back of the house and tried the back door. That one was locked too. Now I was starting to panic. My wife had a habit of leaving doors unlocked most of the time, so it didn't make any sense that the back door would suddenly be locked. Something wasn't right. I hurried to the side of the house to check the breaker box. But the moment I got there, I stopped in my tracks. Right below the breaker box, lying in the grass, was my garden hose, and that's when my stomach dropped. I knew for a fact that hose had been neatly coiled up earlier. But now it was stretched out and lying on the ground. The realization hit me instantly, like a freight train. Someone had cut the power on purpose. Without even thinking, I rushed to the nearest window and looked inside again as carefully as I could. This time I saw something. In the darkness inside the house, I could make out 2 flashlights moving around quickly. The beams of light were swinging across the rooms, like someone was searching through things, like someone was going through my house. I knew exactly what was happening. They were stealing my stuff. Anger rushed through my body immediately. The nerve of someone to break into my house while I was literally standing outside. I quickly reached into my pocket to call the police, but the moment my hand touched my pocket, my heart sank. My phone wasn't there. Then I remembered. I had left it on the couch inside the house. I quietly cursed under my breath. For a moment, I tried to think fast. Then I told myself I would just run to my neighbor's house and borrow his phone. So I started moving toward the nearest house down the street. But after only a few steps, another thought suddenly hit me, a much darker one. My wife was still inside the house. She was most likely asleep inside the house, completely unaware of what was happening and completely vulnerable to whoever was inside. The thought made my heart race. I couldn't leave her in there, not even for another minute. Without wasting any time, I sprinted back toward my house. My hands were shaking as I quickly picked up a few loose rocks from the yard. I started throwing them at our bedroom window as hard as I could, hoping the noise would wake her up. The first rock hit the glass. nothing. The second rock hit, still nothing. But after the third rock, the bedroom window slowly slid open. My wife appeared at the window, confused and half awake. Before she could even ask what was going on, I quickly and quietly told her the situation. I explained that someone was inside the house and told her to immediately hide in our closet. The moment she understood what I was saying, her head disappeared from the window. She didn't ask a single question. She just vanished. I immediately turned and ran as fast as I could toward my neighbor's house. When I reached his porch, I started banging on the door loudly. When he opened it, I explained the situation as quickly as possible, barely able to catch my breath. Then I borrowed his phone and called the police. After that, all I could do was wait. I stood there on his porch, hoping and praying that my wife was safe. Eventually, the police finally arrived. The moment their cars pulled up, I ran straight toward one of the officers and explained everything again as clearly as I could. They rushed into the house right away. But by the time they got inside, it was already too late. The back door was wide open, and whoever had broken in was gone. They had taken more of our valuables than I could even count. My wife was far more shaken than I was, which was completely understandable. But when she told me what had happened while I was gone, it made me angry at myself. I kept thinking I should have done more to protect her. Even today, I still can't forgive myself for leaving her inside that house with people who could have easily been murderers. According to her, only seconds after I told her to hide in the closet, she suddenly heard someone kick the bedroom door open. The person walked into the room. Then she heard the clear sound of a gun being cocked. The man stood there in the bedroom for a few seconds without moving, completely silent, as if he was carefully listening for any sign that someone else was in the room. She later told me that she had never been more terrified in her entire life. I'm almost certain the intruders heard the rocks hitting the window when I was trying to wake her up. And honestly, the most disturbing part of this entire story is that we still live in that same house today, and we don't plan on moving anytime soon. Sometimes I still sit and think about that night, and every now and then a terrifying thought crosses my mind. What could have happened if I hadn't stepped outside during those few brief moments? I've always felt like I'm living in the shadow of my older brother. I'm not resentful, it's just the reality. He runs a thriving business, and I've spent nearly 6 years trying to reach something similar. Recently, I moved back in with my parents to regroup and figure things out. Coming home felt like taking a step backward, but honestly, I didn't have much choice. I was staying in the basement to give them space. Honestly, it wasn't bad at all. It was more like a small apartment. The basement had its own kitchen, bathroom, office, bedroom, and even a TV with my old video games. With all that, I barely needed to go upstairs. I could live down there alone, and it helped me feel like I wasn't completely in the way. One night, it must have been Friday or Saturday, there was a brutal storm raging outside. Rain pounded the windows, and the wind shook the entire house. I've never seen anything like it before. It was intense, chaotic, almost alive. My parents were out for the weekend, so I had the place all to myself, which was perfect. I actually loved the cozy feeling down in the basement that night. There's something calming about lying in bed, safe and warm, while a storm lashes everything outside. I was almost asleep, drifting to the sound of the heavy rain, when suddenly the power went out. Everything went completely dark in an instant. I groaned, frustrated at the interruption. I assumed the storm had knocked out the electricity. For a moment, I thought about checking the breaker, but honestly, I didn't want to deal with it, especially with that storm roaring outside. I decided to just wait it out until morning. Then I heard it, a loud, heavy thud against one of the basement windows. It wasn't subtle, it was sharp, heavy, like something had deliberately hit it. My first thought was maybe a branch had snapped or a tree fell, but this didn't sound random. It was precise, almost intentional. Even though I wanted to ignore it and go back to bed, my curiosity and a growing sense of unease kept me frozen. This wasn't just a power outage. Something else was out there. Something that wasn't supposed to be. Reluctantly, I swung my legs over the bed and grabbed my phone. Using the flashlight, I slowly made my way toward the basement window. The whole room was pitch black. All I could hear was the rain hammering against the glass and the low, rolling growl of thunder outside. I rubbed the sleep out of my eyes, trying to wake myself up, but my body was still frozen in fear. I held the phone up to the window and squinted through the glass, and my heart nearly stopped. There, pressed against the window, was a man's face. He was staring right at me. His eyes were wide, his skin pale and soaked, and for a single terrifying second, he locked eyes with me. Then, as suddenly as he appeared, he moved away. I stumbled back, nearly dropping my phone. What the hell had I just seen? My heart was racing, my chest tightening. But I didn't have time to process it, because then I heard it: footsteps, creaking floorboards above my head. Someone was in the house. Someone knew I was in the basement. Panic hit me like a punch. My mind raced. I was alone. My house was being broken into, and there was no one to help me. I grabbed my phone, ready to call the police, then remembered the storm had knocked out the power. No Wi-Fi, no signal. I was trapped in the basement, completely cut off. Sitting there, paralyzed for a moment, I forced myself to think. I couldn't just wait for them. But confronting them directly, that was suicide. I was stuck between a rock and a hard place. Finally, I made a decision. I would sneak upstairs, slip out the front door, and call the police from outside. It was my only option. Every step felt like a lifetime as I crept toward the basement stairs. Pure fear surged through me. I could barely control my body. When I reached the top, I peeked around the stairwell. My stomach dropped. 3 figures, flashlights cutting through the darkness, were moving through my house. I froze, rooted to the spot, utterly petrified. One of their flashlights swept across the room, and for a brief moment I saw it. One of them was holding a gun. I froze, every muscle in my body tensed. I didn't move. I just stared, heart pounding, as they whispered to each other in low voices. Then I heard it. A calm, almost casual voice said, "Alex is in the basement. Go find him." I couldn't even process it. How the hell did they know my name? Fear gripped me like nothing I'd ever felt. I stepped back down the stairs as quietly as I could, trying to slow my breathing, but inside I was losing it completely. I didn't have time to think. They were coming for me. I had no clue what would happen if they caught me. My eyes darted around, looking for a hiding spot. Nothing. No time. My only chance was to escape, and fast. The basement windows were all sealed tight. I had no other option. I grabbed a nearby stool, climbed into a window well, and smashed the glass with my elbow. Shards flew everywhere, cutting me, but I didn't care. Adrenaline and fear drowned out the pain. I scrambled through the broken window into the pouring rain. I was soaked immediately, mud and water clinging to me as I ran, trying not to slip. Finally, once I was far enough from the house, I got a signal and called the police. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. By the time they arrived, whoever had been in the house was long gone. So much had been stolen that I didn't even bother keeping track. The power outage. Definitely no accident.